At first glance,
Alright.
Mythic Plus definitely does look kind of worrying. I mean,
This is the amount of completed Mythic Plus runs per week. The red line, this is Dragonflight Season 3. The blue line is Season 1. And I mean, green is Season 4. So, I don't want to be that guy, you know, but like, if you see this drop in players playing M+, or well, completing M+, that is a significant drop. Especially at the start of a season. I mean, Season 4 is shit. Like, I'm not telling you that Season 4 wasn't shit. I even quit in Season 4 as well. I did not enjoy Season 4 at all. Like, I thought it was probably one of the worst seasons to play. But like, if you look at the difference here between these weeks, we have been behind for every week that we have played Mythic Plus so far, compared to Season 3. Now, that is a statistic that is kind of worrying, especially whenever you compare it that Season 3 is like somewhat towards the end of the expansion already, compared to Season 1 pretty much having all the hype of an expansion behind it. I think a lot of this has to do with like the way that the new affixes were done. Also, like the state of M+ in general, just like the difficulty curve was like enormously high. Comparing like a +11 to a +12, it was like a brick fucking wall. And besides that, like if you look at like how far certain classes are ahead of other classes and the amount of changes, I don't know. It feels weird. It feels weird, but let's see.
Behind Dragonflight Season 3 pretty significantly.
3KO in Season 3.
The first season of a new expansion. And
I didn't get Tidal in Season 4.
Said, the difficulty level changes that effectively moved the old levels 2 through 10, those would always have dented the numbers a little bit, and delves are absolutely going to be siphoning off players. But this is the launch.
Okay. So right here, right, like this part I don't really necessarily agree with, because like he's talking about like how delves take some portion of the game away compared to M+. And till a certain extent, he's right. Like, sure, you will lose some players because of delves being there. Delves are a thing, and people are going to be playing delves to gear up because, well, if you do Bountiful Tier 8, it is just better than doing like a +2. So like a +2, a +3, like everything that a Bountiful delve can give you is virtually worthless. Now, the other problem is that they made a change in terms of like how much value you get from heroic track and mythic track gear, and they basically made it completely useless to do any M+ key that does not award you heroic track gear. Because like, why would you do any gear, especially with how little crests you actually get to spend and how much time it takes you to get those crests, to then get a piece of gear that is virtually useless? And like, it doesn't really, I don't know, like, I understand it, but like, also, it is just the way that they designed it, in my opinion. I like the Mythic Plus squeeze, honestly. You can just do 8 and get highest crest grade. I mean, yes and no, because like they squeezed it. Virtually, you have to deal with more players at the lower end that were doing lower keys before, but now are doing higher keys because there's just nobody playing anything from like a +2 to a +6. I was gonna level a mage, but I need to do 92 +10s to get all the crests. Yeah, this is the point as well. Like, they did not implement any catch-up mechanic at all for the crests. I thought the same thing. Like, I geared my warrior, I geared a mage, I geared a shaman, and to gear those 3 characters, I have virtually had to spend about at least 150 to 200 hours to get all the crests. Now, I'm a person that has a lot of time to do these things, right? But like, if you're a casual player that has like a job, you have like a family and stuff, it is impossible to retain multiple characters and mythic raid on them, because like mythic track is by far more valuable, so you need to start from the start of the season already with this. And if you don't start from the start of the season, there is just like nothing that you're gonna be able to do in order to keep up with the people that have done that. So alting is like super unfriendly this season, in my opinion. It was the same in the old system? I don't think it was. Like, right now, the level gap between heroic gear and myth track gear and also champion gear is the biggest it's ever been. It has never been this big of a season, or if this big of a gap between heroic and mythic. The difference between those two is so huge that you're just virtually useless if you're completely heroic geared, and you're giga powerful if you're fully mythic geared. But it's absolutely time gated and RNG dependent if you're going to be able to do that. Like, all my ults are stuck around 615, 620 because I can't be bothered farming crests. I don't think anybody can really be bothered to farming crests, and that is like the problem, and that's what I was talking about. I think that if you want to make ults and you want to actually play them on like a significant level, you're gonna have to invest so much fucking time. And especially with M Plus being the way that it is right now, you're just gonna be stuck at the same place anyway. Like, why would you? Let me put it like this. I have a warrior, right? My warrior is like, I don't know. I think my warrior is about 3260 IO. I don't know. Like, I can look it up real quick. Event TV. I don't even know what my IO is at. Let me see. So right now I'm at 3266 IO, and this is basically, I mean, sure, I can do like these on 15 and stuff like this. This is just like unlucky, right? But like, to find these keys on a 16 or higher, there just barely are any keys in the tool. You're gonna be spending your entire day hoping to find a 16, and then you're gonna have to compete with shamans being gigafar ahead, evokers, like frost decays, assassination rogues that are just all far better than warrior. Now, I'm not saying that this hasn't been the case like in every season so far, but it has definitely been way more extreme than it has been before. The gap between like teams and solo players are absolutely fucking massive. It is absolutely fucking massive what you can achieve as a solo player compared to what you can do as a team player. And the only difference between people that are like 3.2k, 3.3k, 3.4k as a solo player is what class they play and how much time they can commit. Because it doesn't magically get that much more difficult. Like, one key level, you can squeeze that with some practice. You don't magically become like a better player overnight or anything. It's not gonna happen. It is just basically, how much time do you have? What class do you play if you're gonna be higher IO or not? If you're a giga skill player, like, I know like some very skilled players that are just not gonna be higher IO purely because of what class they play and their time commitment. They do not have the time to sit in the queue for 5 hours hoping for there to be a plus 15, a plus 16, a plus 17 to come around. It's just not gonna happen. And especially then to see that they are going to take a shaman, a frost decay, and an evoker, and for healers, a disco priest and a prop paladin. It's just they don't have the time for it. It was always the same, but not this extreme though.
A lot of new people should be there, so I'm concerned about these numbers. Taking a look, Dragonflight Season 3 opened with 3.2 million runs. That's 800k more than week 1 of the War Within, and each subsequent week of the War Within has actually
I mean, look at this, right? 800k week 1 difference, 530k difference week 2, 500k difference week 3, almost 520k difference in week 4. This is season 3 versus season 1. Like, brother.
To 500k. That's a lot of Mythic Plus keys that just aren't being done. Now, of course, runs is the key word here, right? If you've got the same amount of players, but they're just playing twice as much, there'll be way more runs. And Season 3 of Dragonflight was notably easier than normal. And it's funny because people actually seem to kind of love it. This chart, right? This shows the percentage of keys that people did that were actually successful across all difficulty levels.
Wait, let me change something real quick.
And it is quite the contrast. Dragonflight Season 3 opened strong at an 85.87% success rate. The War Within's was only 76.97.
I forgot to turn down my my ads on YouTube. Like, if we look here at the in-time ratio, yeah, from Dragonflight Season 3 to the War Within Season 1, I think this is the best thing that you will see with how much people actually struggled with this affix. Like, look at how much of a difference there is. Like, only 72% of keys being timed? That is low, dude. That is really fucking low. This is just about all keys. This is just like keys in general. If you are And this is compared to like dungeons being run, right? That are actually completed. So for completed runs in week 1, 76%. That means that a quarter of the keys that are being completed are out of time. Makes sense in season 1, right? New dungeons, a new system and everything. Like week 1, people are adjusting. But for it to go down in week 2, that just goes to show how much they fucked up in the plus 12 area. Because like in week 2 and week 3, this is where people wanted to start with like the plus 12, the plus 13, plus 14. Normally, this would go up. Normally, people would actually progress, learn the dungeons, they get better, they start depleting less, like they start to become more consistent. Dude, it decreases. Like, look at the statistics, like how much they messed up with this FX. And only here, whenever they start to fix it, it comes crawling back up a little bit. It's the plus 12,
it's pretty much 9%,
plus 12
and
epics.
That's over millions of runs. So that's actually a hell of a lot of gameplay. Gameplay that is, on average, less successful, and Mythic Plus is pretty damn punishing in terms of how, well, you lose your time because you didn't achieve your goal, but then your key depletes, and a lot of people don't really like that. So
that's the other thing as well, right? Like what he says right here about keys being depleted. I'm personally not a big fan of how people want it to be with like keys not depleting and stuff, but I think the majority of players that actually play M+, they really dislike the keys depleting and stuff. Like, they really dislike this system. I'm not sure like how they should counter it, but there is a lot of backlash from out the community that they should update their system in some sort of way for keys not to deplete in the way that they do, because people hate reproccing the same thing over and over and over again, especially whenever it's not in their hands and they have to play with 4 strangers.
Though. The war within week 2
11 is super fine for most people. Yeah, because you're outgearing it.
72%. Dragonflight Season 3 increased all the way up to a 91.72% success rate by week 5. Now, as time goes on, there are factors that can make these numbers fluctuate, right? Like maybe more people doing higher keys, which could decrease the success rate. But I think the core point is clear. Even at its peak success of 84.02% in week 8, the war within success rate does not actually...
Let me put it like this, Vanda. The week 8 from the War Within Season 1, meaning that everybody at this point is like 630 plus geared, is less successful than week 1 from Dragonflight Season 3, when people had no gear at all. So people on average were performing in keys a lot better in Dragonflight Season 3 when people had no gear at all than they do right now in week 8 in M+, while outgearing the living shit out of most of the dungeons.
Actually exceed the lowest value seen in either Season 3 or Season 4 of Dragonflight. And to many of us, that's going to be completely obvious. It feels like Mythic Plus is way harder in the War Within, and the numbers, well, they do actually back that up. Now, of course, people do often like hard punishing games. Those are played all the time, but when we see low numbers like this at the launch of an expansion, it shows that perhaps it's not just the difficulty. It's the overall formula that doesn't seem to be working for players right now. But okay, this is overall numbers. Let's try to zoom in to the per dungeon level. Looking at this, we see the number of runs...
My chem overlaps here a little bit with Necrotic Wake and Stonefold. I will show you guys in a little bit.
With higher completion rates are the ones that players choose to run more than the slower ones with lower...
Alright, so right here, under my chem, we have Necrotic Wake. You guys can see the statistics here. But like, right here, this is like a beautiful metric of like people are not fucking bothered to do these dungeons. Like they are absolutely not fucking bothered to do these dungeons. Like, be realistic. Let me paint you a scenario right now. Just think out of the mind of a casual player. Why the hell would you be filling up your vault by going into City of Threats rather than Mist of Tyrannicide? There is no way for you to justify sitting in a dungeon that is twice as hard, less longer, is far more difficult than just doing a weekly Mist of Tyrannicide. And this is exactly what is wrong with it. Like, the difficulty scale is like all over the place. You can see it as well with like the amount of runs that are being done and like how many are actually being timed over here. Like, it's crazy. Oh shit.
top 3 dungeons are those with only 3 bosses, and yeah, they're also generally far easier. Then on the flip side, take a look at these success rates for Borealis, Grim Batol, and Necrotic Wake. Those
Dude.
are the hardest dungeons. Look at these success rates for Borealis, Grim...
Look at this, bro. The amount of runs compared to how many are actually being timed. That is crazy, actually. That is disgusting. Like, how much these are dragging down, like the average. And I can tell you exactly why there is so many Seeds of Paralysis that are being yeeted. I will show you real quick. Let me go to MDT and I will show you exactly why so many are depleting. It is because of this part. I am telling you that the majority of Seeds of Borealis keys, they deplete purely because people see that the top teams, they skip this by invising. They either pull the radar here because this guy has true vision, or they release anywhere in this area up until when they kill the boss, because people actually think that whenever you kill the first boss that you respawn here, which is not the case. You actually respawn right on top of this pack on G13. And this is how most of Seeds of Borealis keys are being depleted. I can guarantee. I can actually guarantee.
Are the hardest dungeons. They've got tough bosses, tough mechanics, and mechanics that lean very heavily on group utility. So it generically
it is as well, right?
Who aren't planning. And
like this is also something that he says. Like these dungeons, they heavily depend on group utility. However, at the start of this expansion, they removed basically the entire value of having utility. Like AoE stops, their value, I would even say and go as far as telling you that the value from AoE stops are almost negative. Because whenever you AoE, let's say that I AoE stop this earth color, I will use my AoE stop and it will instantly recast after that I use my stop. If someone kicks at the same time that I use my AoE stop, there's no way for us to stop this one anymore. Now we still have the diminishing returns. I do not know why they left diminishing returns in the equation, considering that AoE stops are basically, well, they're not useless, but they're not really that useful anymore. So I would argue that maybe just remove like diminishing returns on AoE stops, but that's not up to me. However, you're building a dungeon that requires like a lot of stops, and you basically remove the entire thing of AoE stops being a thing. Like, it doesn't add up, and that's why these dungeons, like, it giga fails. Like, this next pull that they're gonna do, like, you cannot really see it here, but, like, there's, like, 2 casters in here, and they're pulling it with the mobs that are over here, which is, like, another 2. So you have, like, 4 kicks, and you can never handle it if AoE stops don't work in a bug. It's just always some shit is gonna go through. It's kind of
pug runs. Well, maybe you won't be planning as much. Now, if there is a silver lining in this data, it is probably that the difference in time ratio between War Within Season 1 dungeons is lower than in past seasons. So past seasons were easier, but they did have less even difficulty. It does seem then that the War Within is harder overall, but it is more consistent in its level of challenge. None of this comes as a surprise to me, and it probably isn't a surprise to you. Even if you're looking at, say, the very top players in the game who often are streaming, who've got YouTube channels,
debatable.
They are not feeling great about Mythic Plus. So the highest end players don't appear to be that happy, and certainly looking at mid-level players and newer players, well, they really seem to be bouncing off Mythic Plus in this season.
Keys are too hard. Tell us, you just chose the wrong spec, brother. You're a boomy. You already used up all your complaining rights on your class being shit. You got buffed like 3 times. You cannot complain about this as well. Doesn't work like that. I'm sorry. To be honest, I think that the Orb FX is probably the worst of them all, as well as how so many bosses work. Getting the FX during the first boss in City of Threats, second boss Arakara, and so on as well. I think you're right. Like, a lot of these FXs, they don't really work well with the dungeons. Like, they didn't really think about like how some of these things actually interact with some of the dungeon mechanics. Another nice example would be Siege, last boss. So some of the ideas that they have about these FXs, they are great. Don't get me wrong. Like, the idea behind it is amazing. However, you are punished in a way sometimes which is completely out of your control. And then obviously, like, some people just say like, oh yeah, but you should plan for that better. And it's like, no, because it's inconsistent. There is no set timer for when the FX is actually going to happen. It is like a variance timer, meaning that it can happen within the next 10 seconds, for example. And there's no really planning around it, especially on lower keys where people are already busy with trying to survive like the actual mechanics of the dungeon. So it just factors in an extra level of difficulty. Sometimes that difficulty is just completely out of your control and there's nothing that you can do about it, or it just has very weird interactions that are bugged or don't work as intended, or just you get the point, right? Like, some of these things are just not working as intended, how they should have done it, or how they intended it to be.
Data that we've got access to, Season 3 of Dragonflight was easy. Some may even say it's a touch too easy, but people actually played a lot of it. You could argue that they did that just to get some more gear, but I'd also argue, what is the core of an MMO about? Well, in so many cases, it's about doing dungeons with your friends and having a good time. I believe that fundamentally Dragonflight Season 3 did that more effectively. Now,
I agree.
A deep dive.
All right, anyways,
with your experience, what's your
experience
like versus Dragonflight?
I think Belladere made like a lot of good points. I think he made a lot of good points. So if you guys wanna watch the video yourselves as well, here you go. Make sure to give him a like and everything. Like, I think he makes great content. So I mean, give him a like. I think it was a great video. So I mean, he deserves the like, you know.